All right, everybody, welcome back. 2022 edition of Chasing Winners. The NFL season is upon us. I think we made it through 9 weeks last year, 9 or 10 weeks. We made it through 9 or 10 weeks, and then all of us, JP was getting ready to graduate. Kyle had his own stuff. I had my own stuff. We were all kind of going through stuff, and I was like, you know what? It was good to get, for the first year, 9, 10 weeks out. We did it consistently. I don't know exactly what we did, but we're back, and I'm back, like I said on Twitter earlier. I called him Dumb and Dumber. You can call him the two idiots. You can give him whatever you want to call him. Kyle Mastoloni, JP, Lyon, guys, what's up?
Yeah, I was gonna say the funnier story would have been we all just drove ourselves nuts over Vic Fangio, so we had to stop.
Vic Fangio. There's certain people that are always going to be a way bigger part of your life than they should be, and Vic Fangio will be that guy for me, just because of the consistent of the issue he had with the Ravens, but then just like back and forth. It's just like he's the classic example of the 70-year-old guy who just shouldn't be in the NFL anymore. Just time's passing by. JP, what's up with you? Speaking of 70-year-old guys, you still got the same quarterback.
Well, you got rid of Vic Fangio, I got rid of Mike Zimmer, and Kyle got rid of Joe Judge. So I'd say we're in for a much better year this year.
Maybe one day you guys will be in a position like me where we can have the same head coach for, a decade. Who would have thought? Let's start with last year. Let's go through what we did last year. I know we only went through 9 or 10 weeks last year, but let's go through what we did. I know I had a great year on the pod. You guys, actually not as bad of a year as you guys made it seem. I think you guys had a couple good weeks to end the season. But, if anybody, if you're around 50%, just generally in the NFL season, picking every single game, I think that's good. So let's go through last year. So Kyle, I'm not going to say you were in last place. I'll say you were in third place. You were 62-73. It's a 46% over the bets, and you were 14-14, which any mathematician can do is 50% on your best bets. JP, you were 64-70-1, 48%, and you're 18-15-1 on your best bets, so you were 55%. And as you can see, the king is sitting in his throne right now because that's how it works. I was 69-65-1, 51.5%. I could have went for more wins, but I thought 69 was a good number to finish on, considering I had you guys beat pretty easily. Didn't have to worry about that. But you get to the best bets. Somebody went 24-9, 73% on their best bets. And if only somebody would have put all of that money, doubled, tripled their units on their best bets as a normal person would, my football season would have gone, a little better last year. JP, how do you plan to dethrone the king this year? Because, better come after it.
Well, I realized that once you started playing your best bets a lot better when you just threw out 7 of them in the last week. So that's going to be my strategy this year. I think if I go 6-1 on my best bets, then I have a chance.
Well, but that's the thing is I went 6-1 the week I had 7 best bets. If you're going to throw out 7 best bets every week and go 6-1, then I'll put the crown on you.
You had 7 best bets 3 weeks of the year, and they went 5-2, 5-2, 6-1. So I'd say that the key is putting out 7.
I'm not going to say no.
And the one
Kyle,
week that I did the most best bets I had 6, and I went 4-1-1. So the key is to do more.
So Kyle, being the Knicks guy, are you going to follow the same path and do the Carmelo Anthony and just put up 50 shots a game and put up 50 a game?
Definitely. That seems to be the way to win around here. So 6-7 best bets a week. I was just doing 3 of them. So every single week I stayed consistent with 3, but it seems like the more the merrier.
One of you guys is going to be like 3-19 through like 4 weeks or something like that. But hey, went down shooting, right?
It's going to be me.
One can only hope, but who knows? Actually, you know what? Your football team already sucks. I have to have a little bit of sympathy for you at this point of the season, being a Giants fan. JP's team at least has a little bit of hope. My team has a little bit of hope. I guess we'll have to be nice to you. To say you don't have hope would be a little bit of an understatement. Although I guess you're in the NFC East, so you always kind of have hope in the NFC East.
Just wait for it. Kyle's long shot's going to be the Giants this year.
Yeah. Daniel Jones MVP. So, all right, well, let's get into it. Let's go through divisions as we did last year. We're going to go through, pick the division winner of every single division. We did it with odds. So, there's some that we picked that are favorites. Kyle put some parlay together, even though that wasn't really an option. JP and I took some of the favorites and are just like, this is the team we think is going to win. We can't really see another team winning. We don't think any other team has better odds, or value to win it. So I may not bet it at this number or whatever, but this is the team I like to win it. So let's go through these divisions. Let's start with the division we all agree on, which is never a good thing, and the defending Super Bowl champions, which I will say somebody did predict the Rams to win the Super Bowl last year. Somebody did predict Matthew Stafford to be Super Bowl MVP, but we don't have to go back to next year or last year. We're on to this year. But the Rams plus 130 to win that West. JP, I'll start with you. I guess there's really not as much to say. It's just, the defending champs coming back. I think there's, we could look at the 49ers and the Cardinals as, teams that, have the talent to be able to do it. I don't think the Seahawks are kind of in that conversation right now. As you putting down, a bet on the Rams to win the NFC West at plus 130, what would you be most afraid of between either the Cardinals or the 49ers?
I'd be afraid of Kyler Murray growing foot, and I'd be afraid of Trey Lance learning how to play football successfully. That's what would scare me the most in picking the Rams this year, because it doesn't feel like they lost any important pieces from that team last year, and plus 130 at that price, and you might as well take it.
Well, good news is I think only 50% of that can happen. I think there's a chance Trey Lance, learns how to play football in his first throw year. If Kyler grows a foot, I guess I'll eat my words on that one. But, who knows? Maybe Kyler's going to come out in week 5 and he's just going to be like 6'6" and be like, this guy's a fucking monster. Kyle, you're on the Rams plus 130. Give me the thing that has to happen for the Rams to not win this division.
I mean, I think a lot has to go wrong for the Rams to not win this division, and injuries first and foremost. Secondly, I would say the only matchup that could give them some issues. I mean, the 49ers defense, if they come out, they're great. I mean, that's the only issue I really see here, other than Kyler Murray growing a foot.
And I'm going to say I agree with you guys in terms of, I think the fact that, and JP will get to your long shots later, but I think there's other teams in this division that could potentially have more value to win a Super Bowl or win the NFC or whatever. But I think on a week in and week out basis, the team that most consistent is going to be the best showing up every single week, I think, is the Rams, and that's why I like them. I already bet them in real life plus 130 to win that division. A lot of times you'll look at division winners and be like, okay, this team won the division, they're most likely to win the Super Bowl, or they're the most likely team from this division to win the Super Bowl, which a lot of times is the case. But obviously, there gets to the point where it's like this team was just good because they showed up for 17 weeks in a season and, put together an 11-6 record or, whatever it was, and get, it's almost kind of like the baseball analogy is where you can have a great regular season team. They're just good for 162 games. But then when you get to the playoffs, you've got, let's say, 3 aces or 2 aces that in a 5-7 game series is, kind of like that. So that's kind of how I look at the Rams. I don't know if I'm betting them to win the Super Bowl at lower odds, but I do like them at plus 130. All right, Kyle, let's go to the NFC East. We'll get this one over with quick. We all are on the Eagles plus 160 to win that division. You're a Giants fan. Obviously, I think we've talked about this where it's kind of this is a proven year for Daniel Jones. It's been a proven year for Daniel Jones since 2004 or whatever, since his middle school 7th grade season or whatever it was. But I think this division comes down to the Cowboys and the Eagles. I could make a case for the Commanders, but that's only because it's the NFC East. But Kyle, we all went with the Eagles plus 160. What do you like most about the Eagles coming into this year?
So the Eagles, I mean, it's more.
You're already wrong. The answer is AJ Brown. You're already wrong. The answer is AJ Brown. I set you up for it.
Obviously. So they have AJ Brown this year to throw to. That should help a lot. The wide receiver core is great. Jalen Hurts, wheels as always. I'm more down on the Cowboys though than I'm up on the Eagles. I just feel like they're losing a lot on the offensive line. I just feel like they're losing a lot on the offensive line. And that was the key to their game before really. and they're just bringing back some of the same skill players. I think everybody's going to have a chance to figure them out this year, and I don't think they're going to be as good as we all think they were.
Obviously, losing Amari, Gallup's kind of banged up a little bit, which we'll get into that when I get to week 1. I don't know how you don't play Noah Brown week 1 in DFS. Seems like a great spot for him, but I agree with you in terms of the Cowboys, where I just think it's a lot of pieces where I don't think they're going to be bad, but their team totals at 10, I just think is it's crazy to think that team's going to win. Put your money on that team is going to win 11 games, and obviously they could, and for sure it's the NFC East. The Cowboys could run through the NFC East. JP, I guess the question for you when we're talking about the Eagles, Kyle mentioned him quickly, it's Jalen Hurts. 1, is he a good quarterback? And 2, how good does he have to be to win this NFC East?
He doesn't have to be good. It's the NFC East.
Because he's got A.J. Brown. Exactly.
Right. So the only thing that scares me here is Carson Wentz being back in the NFC East. That's the division he likes to win. As far as Jalen Hurts goes, I've always been high on him. Even last year when I picked the Eagles, when none of us picked the Cowboys and everyone picked a different loser in this division, I think I was just a year too early. Everyone knows that nobody repeats in this division. So if you're looking at the 3 teams other than the Cowboys, there's no reason that you pick anybody but the Eagles.
So I actually
go ahead.
To make about Carson Wentz being back in the division. I was actually just at the Commanders Chiefs preseason game this last weekend, the most random thing ever. And I'll tell you, I think Taylor Heineke is better than Carson Wentz.
Oh, he is.
Outside of the NFC East.
Yeah. Carson Wentz just loves the NFC East.
So here's the one thing that I was thinking about, and obviously I'm on the Eagles plus 160 here too to win that division. A bet that I like, that if you think there's a chance the Commanders, and you're backing on Carson Wentz and you think the Commanders can win that division, I think a good value bet is Ron Rivera's 30-1 to win Coach of the Year. He's a guy that people like to vote for. He's obviously went through his cancer stuff. He's one of the most well-respected guys around the league. I think if the Commanders have a good year and they end up winning that NFC East, I think 30-1 on him to win that Coach of the Year. I think that's kind of a good way to kind of get some value on a Commanders division bet. It'll never not be weird saying the Commanders, but I'm not racist, so I won't say the R word.
I want to go back to that.
I don't think.
All right, let's go to the end.
I was just gonna say, don't think I should comment on Coach of the Year ever after picking Flores last year.
Kyle?
Well, the only thing worse would have been Joe Judge.
Gets fired.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
I want Kyle to pick another Coach of the Year this year and then he gets fired again. I just want him to pick who's going to get fired.
Well, I mean, we just talked about it. I don't think it's crazy that if the Cowboys start, not like the Cowboys, that Jerry Jones by Thanksgiving is like, fuck this, and Mike McCarthy's out. I don't think that's
He
crazy.
should have done that years ago.
Yeah, but he needs his little puppets that he can play with, and the guys that walk in and say, yes, Jerry.
I don't think he's going to do it mid-season. I think he'll do it at the end of the season, but I don't think he'll do it mid-season.
That's very Jerry Jones to not do it mid-season, which is why I think at some point before Jerry Jones is done being Jerry Jones, he's going to have that one coach middle of the year where he's just like, okay, well, you can't say Jerry never fired the coach middle of the year. All right, NFC South. Kyle, this is the first part of your 3-team parlay that you've created. You're on the Bucks minus 250. There's not much to say about the Bucks. The Bucks are similar to what they've been the past couple of years. Brady's back from retirement. That's kind of the most important thing to the Bucks. When Brady leaves the Bucks go back to irrelevancy, and that's how it is. So instead of asking you why the Bucks and all this, I'm going to ask you a simple question. So they're part of your parlay. They're minus 250. At what number would you bet the Bucks straight up to win this division? At minus what? What would be the highest number you'd bet?
Straight up to win the division, it's just really hard for me to bet anything in the minus 200 or above straight up to win any NFL division with how unpredictable the NFL could be sometimes. So I would probably say 180, minus 180, minus 175. I would bet them straight up at. I am pretty, obviously they're in a parlay. I'm pretty confident they're going to win this division. I don't see anything that could really trouble them. I mean, I guess if Baker Mayfield just comes in and lights it up, but I don't see that happening. And I'm not scared of Jameis, so
That's your mistake.
Yeah.
JP, tell him why he should be scared of the best quarterback in football.
So Jameis is capable of winning this division, and obviously the Bucks are the better team. They have the better quarterback, but I really like the weapons that they've put together for Jameis, with Kamar running the football because he's never going to get in trouble. And I would
At
argue
least not
they
on the
might.
field.
What?
I said at least not on the field.
Correct. um, they might have a better defense soon, which is weird to say, but they've had a really great defense recently, and if Jameis stays
Is there a better
healthy,
front seven in football? I think they've got the best front seven in football.
I mean, there's certain that's
You could
certainly
maybe
a debate.
argue
Yeah.
there too, but yeah.
hmm Yeah, I think if he stays healthy, they could be they could have an outside chance to, make conference championship, make it further. So, at plus 340, plus 310, depending on the site, that's a great bet to me. And that's why, like, half of the money in this division is on the Saints.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Obviously, with Sean Payton leaving it, it's different. There's no more of the Drew Brees. We're year 2 out of that. But I just think when you look at it, just plus 340, that number, it just seems way too high for me. I think this is more of, I don't mind the Bucks being minus 200, minus 210, kind of in that range. But to me, the Saints are a plus 290, a plus, 300, that kind of range. So maybe it's not crazy value. Kyle mentioned Baker Mayfield and the Panthers. Obviously, I think we're all kind of on the train that Baker's, better than this public reputation he has, that, we've gone through this back and forth where it's like, I don't see a world where Baker's not a top 32 quarterback in the NFL and where he shouldn't be starting on a team for the next 5 years minimum. And, I understand other teams, obviously, if, hey, we're rebuilding, we're going to try and get a young guy in and try and, do whatever. But once you're past that guy, if you're a team that's kind of ready to win, Baker's, certainly a guy that can help you lose the games, but I think he's good enough that can help you win the games. So the Panthers are kind of obviously in that, conversation as well. But I just, Michael Thomas also out for the Saints. Who knows when he's going to be healthy? Who knows? He had a groin injury last week. He's one of those guys that every other week gets hurt. So, you can't really count on him, but when I'm looking at the Saints, I don't factor him as much, which is crazy because he's, when healthy, one of the best receivers in football. But I just think the way they're built, I talked about their front seven. I just think they're able to get after the quarterback. It may not be the classic Saints we're used to, and like we've talked about, where James can put up some points and obviously put up some points for the other team too. But the Saints have had that defense that's gotten better and better the past 3 or 4 years. And, this just may be a team that, finds a way to grind out some of these 17, 14, games that are late on a Sunday where, everyone's watching. It's just like, well, this defense is good. And I think that's kind of where we're at with the South. I think we'd agree the Bucks are the most likely winner, but just as plus 340 for the Saints, I think it's just some good value and a good bet there. All right, we'll finish up the NFC. JP, it's your turn. The NFC North, obviously you're the Vikings fan. I'll go to Kyle first because Cheater decided this was leg number 2 of his parlay. Kyle, the Packers are minus 190 straight up to win that division. They're part of your second of your 3-leg parlay for division winners. I guess the question I'll ask you, how much does Devontae leaving hurt this team?
I actually don't think it hurts them as much as you think it would. I mean, I think Alan Lazard started stepping up late last season. They do still have some weapons. Old man Randall Cobb's still around there, so that should help a little bit. But I don't think it hurt. I think they will rely on a run a little bit more than they did before, at least, because they have 2 of the best running backs in the league. I mean, it's just ridiculous that you have an Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon pairing on the same team. You have 2 different weapons. Rotate them in and out all game. Keep them fresh. There's no RB1, which I think is pretty special.
As an Aaron Jones fan, it's the worst. It's like, just like, free this guy.
Yeah, it's not good for fantasy at all. It's not good for fantasy or props, but it's great for winning football games.
AKA going back to the Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams back in the day for the Panthers. That was just like, well, we're just going to have 2 of the best running backs in football. That's just how it's going to be. They're going to be 2 different guys. JP, I'm with you on this one. I don't think the Vikings are the most likely winner of this division, but I'm going to pick them with you if we're looking at these odds at plus 260. I just think there's a lot there. We've talked about, obviously, Devontae leaving the Packers. The Packers defense, once again, we've talked about the Saints where, you think of the Saints as high-scoring team that, they'll kind of keep up somewhat defensively. The Packers defense has gotten much better over the past couple of years, obviously, from, 2 or 3 years ago when they gave up I think it was 1,900 rushing yards in the NFC Championship game to the 49ers, and they're like, well, we should probably draft, a couple guys that can play that. Well, they drafted Jordan Love, and then after that, they decided to shore up that defense. They've got a couple corners back there. When you're talking about the secondary, they're one of the best secondaries in football. But the Vikings plus 260, they've got a lot going on. Obviously, Dalvin, you could argue, is one of the best running backs in football. Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers in football. We don't have to talk about the quarterback because, he'll just be out there and hopefully at least lines up under the center to take the snap from the right person. What do you think about the Vikings plus 260 this year? What I'll ask you the inverse of this question. What is the most likely thing to happen to the Vikings for them to not win this division? Not from the Packers' point of view, from the Vikings, but what would they do where they're not going to win the division?
I mean, it's the same thing that's plagued us forever. It's just we've never had an O-line since John Sullivan was our center, and Adrian Peterson was running for 2,000 yards behind him. And that's what's plagued our offense for the last decade. And between that and Mike Zimmer last year, where I think the only reasons that this team can't be a top 5 offense in football. I really believe that with the weapons they have. And signing Zadarius Smith from the Packers, that helps us a lot. And I think the defense is going to be better. If the O-line is better at all, then plus 260, I think, is a great value.
I'm with you. I like the offensive line's that one spot. The defense of the Vikings, and I'm not even going to talk about this year, just in general. It just feels like a team defensively, and obviously with Zimmer, coming from Cincinnati with that defensive background, they were good for the most part most weeks, but then they would just have a week where it felt like they would just let up 400 yards and it was just 30 points at 3 quarters in. And it's like, well, Kirk's not an awful quarterback, but he's also not the quarterback that's going to be like, all right, well, we're down 24-7, like go win us this football game. Like that's not what he's going to do. So I think that's kind of the key is, the defense keeping them close early, which I think the defense is good enough this year, assuming they can stay healthy. And then the offensive line helping keep Kirk upright. I think that's kind of, the key.
Yeah, I think our front seven is going to be a lot better this year. Between Zadarius and Daniel Hunter, if he stays healthy, I think that pass rush is going to be better. And the secondary is just young, so if they grow up quick and stay healthy, then I think that defense is going to be all right.
And I think the key is for them to get after the quarterback, like you said, with that front seven, because obviously a young secondary, help them grow, help them learn by not having to cover 5, 6, 7 seconds on a play. Make them, understand the read of a receiver, have to defend the first and second route, and kind of, get out of it. You mentioned him earlier. One of my favorite quotes, I think it was Channing Crowder when he was talking about Adrian Peterson. He said, "Explain to me how you're supposed to tackle Adrian Peterson when it's a left guard running behind the left guard." One of the greatest quotes I've ever heard. I'm pretty sure it's Channing Crowder. If it wasn't, whoever it was, it's a great quote. But Adrian Peterson, that was. I mean, I'm not going to say Dalvin's Adrian Peterson, but you could do a lot worse than Dalvin Cook.
I don't even think it's a question that he's one of the best running backs in football. He's certainly, top 5, top 6.
I just think there's, you could argue there's, off the top of my head, not even that. I mean, obviously that's part of it, but I'm not even talking about that. If you're just talking about realistically, you could argue there's 7 or 8 running backs on their best day are the best running back in football. I think you could really argue that.
Yeah,
that was off the top of my head. Maybe that's not the right number, but definitely 5, 6, something like that.
Yeah, I would say he's without question one of the top 5, 6 backs in the league, and I think his floor, his average is better than some of those other guys who, on their best day, they're better than anybody, but usually they're not going to be that level.
All right, let's go to the AFC. AFC East, we are all on the Bills. Kyle, this is the third part of your 3-team parlay. The Bills are minus 240. I'm sure JP and I are kind of on the same train here where, we're not betting them at minus 240 to win this division. Although I do think there is a misnomer where it's like, oh, this team's minus 200 or minus 2 whatever to I can't lay this juice. I can't, if you realistically think the Bills have a 95% chance of winning this division, then minus 240 is nothing. Minus 240, you should be betting lots of units on it. I just think they're the most likely winner of this division. I could see other things happening where maybe it becomes close and I don't want to be on the minus 240 side. Obviously starting in Miami, with if Tua takes that step forward, now that he's got Tyreek Hill, now that they've got a new head coach, whether you want to call him cool or a nerd or cool nerd, who knows? kind of seems like he's right down the middle. The Bills are the most likely winner of this division. Kyle, we talk about Josh Allen, we talk about Stephon Diggs, this Bills offense. How do I phrase this question? Where does this team's wins come from when Josh Allen's not being Josh Allen and Diggs isn't coming from 150 yards? How do they win those kind of cold games in December where they've only got 200 yards?
That is a really interesting question, because obviously we are going to see some cold games. They play up in Buffalo. Josh Allen seems to still strike, but if he were to go down for some reason, or
just not even be himself.
Yeah, I think we could see this defense carry games this year. I mean, they have a solid front four. My guy Greg Rousseau from the U, Von Miller's there now. So I mean, I think they could win games in the trenches if they really have to. Obviously, that's not the preference for them. They just like to throw the ball around for 300, 400 plus yards. But yeah. I think they could win. I think they could win with their defense this year and their front four if they have to.
I'm glad I didn't have to spoon feed you that one, because I almost did, because I was setting up for the Gregory Rousseau and the Von Miller, because Rousseau, obviously, we talked about it. As a Ravens fan, that's the guy that I wanted. He's your Miami boy. He went to the Bills. But I think that's kind of what you talked about, is just in terms of that defense. I think they've got a lot of guys. Ed Oliver's on that front. I don't even know if they play a front seven. I don't know what they play, but Ed Oliver's up there. And then when you're going towards the linebackers and going back to the secondary, they've got guys like Micah Hyde, who's been added. They've got Tremaine Edmonds. JP, I know you know Tremaine Edmonds. I think he's in terms of just a good solid middle linebacker, of just a guy that's going to kind of keep that defense and just keep guys where they need to be. And I think he's kind of a big piece for that. JP, I guess the question I'll ask you is, outside of the Bills, and I'll say outside the Dolphins, because I think the Dolphins are the one that I kind of already went over, between the Patriots and the Jets, which team would be most likely to dethrone the Bills, and what would have to happen?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is the Patriots. And what would have to happen
and
is
Tom Brady coming back.
Well, yeah, that would be the easiest way for that to happen. But
that's more likely than Kyler growing a foot.
I don't know about that. But no, I think Devontae Parker being in New England is going to be important for them. Tyquan Thornton, shout out him. I think he can make an impact on this team. So those two weapons for Mac Jones would be key for his development. But no, I think it's pretty clear it's the Bills, and the Dolphins are that easy second choice. And it feels like you can just pick that division order exactly. I think the Jets will be better than they have been this year. So, I mean, their team totals of 5.5 wins. That might be an interesting bet. But other than that, I wouldn't say the Jets have any chance of winning this division unless Zach Wilson turns into Tom Brady.
And I think the biggest compliment you can give somebody is, at least in this situation, especially a defensive cornerback, is to not talk about them at all, because that just means that they're so good and they're so locked down that it's like, well, obviously this guy's still here. Obviously he's still doing what he does. So I'll ask you this. Kyle, I'll start with you, and then JP, you after me. Is Tre'Davious White the best cornerback in football?
He's definitely up there. I would say he's like top 3 or 4. I mean, yeah, he's he can ball.
JP?
I'll say no, because I don't.
I'll ask you in this way. If you're starting a team and you're like, I'm starting with a lockdown corner, is Tre'Davious White on your short list of guys where it's like, hey, this is my first pick. This is the shutdown corner I'm taking?
He's on your short list, yeah. I probably still take Ramsey before him, depending on the age too. But he also has, didn't he tear his ACL? Trey White, didn't he?
Tre'Davious White. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd probably go Ramsey first, and then after that it's up for debate. But yeah, he's certainly one of those guys.
And I think that's always something interesting because it's always like when you're talking about cornerbacks, it's like you could have these different kind of guys that play different styles of corners. We always talk about the biggest example of the biggest difference in style of cornerbacks is between a guy like Jalen Ramsey and a guy like Trevon Diggs, where Jalen Ramsey is not going to give up the yards Diggs going to give up, but he's also not going to have what Diggs have, like 11 interceptions or 7 and whatever. He had something stupid last year, whatever. And Ramsey's kind of like the guy where it's like you don't need to have those interceptions because it's just back to like kind of what Revis used to be, where it's just like, well, they're just not going to throw it as much. He's just not going to give up the yards, as opposed to a guy like Diggs, who it's like, well, you can have guys that are going to have 150-yard games on him, but he's also going to have 2 picks and 1 for a touchdown because he's just a gambler and just kind of how he plays. Almost, obviously me as a Ravens fan, it's like the exact, way we have it, where we've got a guy like Marlon Humphrey and a guy like Marcus Peters, where you've got one guy who's like, well, I'm just going to shadow you down the field, and Marcus Peters is just like, well, I'm just going to try and find the football and forget about the receiver. So I think that's always kind of an interesting way to look at defenses and how they're built and whether they're playing zone and man and how, obviously the help over the top, whether it's a safety or whether you're on a team where you've got a linebacker, like in San Francisco, like a Fred Warner, where it's like, hey, maybe I've got some help over the top for my linebacker. And I think that's always kind of an interesting way to look at when you're looking in the season in terms of wide receiver, tight end matchups and who to exploit in fantasy and DFS. I think it's always interesting to look at how the defense plays and how does offenses play against that style of defense and how they, whatever. But regardless, Tre'Davious White is always, on that short list of guys you want to build that secondary around.
So, both of you on corners, since you touched on it a little bit, would you rather have the gambler like Trayvon Diggs, or would you rather have a lockdown corner?
It depends on how I'm built.
Yeah, I mean, if the rest of my team,
I don't want Trayvon Diggs lining up in front of Ed Reed, if that's what you're asking me. One of the greatest safeties in all of football, but I don't need 2 gamblers in front of each other. But when you're looking at guys, just over the top guys, I actually think they're set up almost kind of perfectly because Tre'Davious White, he's not as much of a gambler as Diggs. He is, kind of in the middle between Ramsey and Diggs. When you've got guys like Poyer and Hyde over the top that can help you and kind of just be those kind of ball hawks when they need to be. I think that's kind of the key.
Yeah, for me, it completely depends on it. I mean, obviously, if I have to choose one or the other, I'd rather have the guy that you're not going to throw the ball to. But if you give me the gambler with guys over the top that will make up for him every time he gets beat, then I'll take the gambler. But I need that safety there to help out.
Let me play devil's advocate. What if we're looking at the other side of the football? What if we're looking at a team like the past couple of years, like the Bears, where it's like they're just not going to score offensively? I'm hoping to put a couple of these guys on defense that can just get me 6 points, out of nowhere and just kind of jumpstart things. That might be important too, where it's like, hey, my offense isn't putting up points. It's got to come from somewhere, whether it's a kick return or defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that parlay is plus 202. Just need to put that out there.
Plus 202 because plus 200 is not good enough. Those extra 2 points you need.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of a team that's not going to have much trouble scoring the football this year, or we don't think so. Obviously, when you talk about some of the best running backs in football, you could argue this guy is the best running back in football. Probably had the best year last year. I guess not even probably. I guess definitely had the best year last year. I'm not really sure how you could argue that in terms of a running back position. You go to the AFC South, the Colts, we are all are on them minus 130 to win this division. I actually have already bet it in real life. I got it minus 120. So I've got that as a real life bet. It's scary when all of us are on this minus 130 to win the division because it's like we're all like, we always talk about it, it's like we're like the little mice and we see the cheese in the trap and we're like, you know what, we can get the cheese out before the trap closes, and you stick your finger in and get you every fucking time. So, JP, what has to happen for the Colts to not win this division?
Jonathan Taylor, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to take a step back just because it was his rookie season and that's people are going to game plan for him now. Other than that, I would say Tannehill has to take a step forward with the weapons he has or doesn't have now. Losing A.J. Brown, I think, really hurts him. Bringing Robert Woods helps. Getting Burks as a rookie helps. But other than that, I mean, they just don't have very many weapons, which makes it hard for me to take the Titans here. Like last year, you guys were both on the Colts. I was on the Titans. And because I didn't want to bet on Carson Wentz, and that worked out. So I was all hyped up to say, all right, this year I'm on the Colts. They're going to take some other team. It's going to be great. now we're all on Matt Ryan. So that's really not what I wanted, but here we go.
So I'll ask you this, and I know he hasn't necessarily had the stats, or he hasn't had the on-field production, mainly because of, just being kind of a second guy and not getting as much of potential. And I'll take the Packers out of the situation because we've already talked about Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, where there is no backup running back there. It's just 1A and 1B. Could you make the case that Nyheim Hines is the most talented backup running back in football?
No, it's Alexander Madison.
I guess I should have asked Kyle where there's no backup. He would been like, yeah, no, you know what, Baumohl? Wayne Gallman.
Be...
I don't even know if he's still on the Giants, but Wayne Gallman, he can run.
It'll be like the Niners probably, or because they don't have a first running back. Raheem Mostert went to the Dolphins, but yeah, Nyheim Hines is definitely in there. He's not going to be utilized like that because they have a bell cow running back number one.
Well, and the reason I said that is because you talk about Jonathan Taylor potentially taking some sort of a step back, where he could even still take a step backwards this year and still have an unbelievable season just because of what he had last year. So that's kind of why I brought up Hines, because I think he's kind of that option. You can use him in the backfield, use him in the slot, use him. I mean, they've even put him out wide before. Obviously, returns kicks, returns punts. Just a guy that feels like he could get into one of those games where it's like maybe he doesn't necessarily have a kick or a punt return for a touchdown, but he's got two big returns, and all of a sudden you put him in the backfield or you put him, in a slot, and it's like next thing you know, this guy's got 70 yards offensively. He's got 140 yards on special teams. Just he feels like one of those guys that is just, we'll get to the Ravens later. Just feels like one of those guys where it's like, this guy is not going to change 17 games a year, but he could win them 2 or 3 games just by, being that guy in 2 or 3 games. I think that's kind of, an important thing. Kyle,
Yep.
What has to happen for the Colts to not win this division?
What has to happen for the Colts to not win this division? I mean, Derrick Henry has to be even better than he's ever been in his life, which is impossible to say because he's been a beast. But they have zero weapons in the passing game in Tennessee. So they have Robert Woods, but I mean he's not. They lost A.J. Brown, which obviously you mentioned it hurt. So yeah, they're going to be relying heavy on Derrick Henry as they always do, and he has to not get hurt. And then also the Jacksonville Jaguars don't really interest me that much, to be honest. I think they're going to be terrible again. Same thing with the Texans. So I think they're really. So the Colts, the only thing that really would hurt them is injuries, I feel like.
And we'll get to this when we get to the team totals later in terms of the Titans. But I'm not expecting much from the Jags and the Texans, but I think they're going to be better than people think. I think if we're being honest, if I'm looking at the Texans and the Jaguars, I would almost argue the Jaguars have a higher ceiling and a lower floor. I feel like they're the team to most likely bottom out in that division if it just all kind of goes wrong. I think the Texans don't really kind of have that high of a ceiling, but I think their win totals at 3.5 or 4.5 or something like that. I mean, I'm too big of a pussy to put money on the Texans in that win total, but I just think they're the classic, like they're going to go 5-12 or 6-11. I just think that's kind of what the Texans are this year. And I think, in terms of Davis Mills, I think he's just, he's fine. He is what he is, But like when we talked about it before, like the Texans are an objectively better football team if Baker Mayfield's their quarterback, right?
Yeah, and on the Jaguars end, it is obviously possible that Trevor Lawrence turns a corner without Urban coaching him, number one, without that disaster, and then number two, just getting used to the league in his second year with a few more weapons involved. He could definitely turn, but I don't see it happening this year.
And then with the Jags, obviously how healthy James Robinson gets. When you talk about one of the more underrated running backs in football, I think James Robinson's up there. Obviously, they've got Etienne now too, down there in Jacksonville. So, but just another situation where it's like you could argue, if Etienne is the guy they think he could be, Robinson stays healthy, the two of them, could be a decent backfield in Jacksonville. So I think that's kind of the only way the Colts don't win that division. Not necessarily that the Jags or the Texans would win that division, although I think there's a chance the Jags could. I don't think they will, but I think there's a chance. But I think if the two of them can put together, 2 or 3 good games against the Colts, and just kind of take a couple wins, the Colts kind of go down to 9 or 10 wins. The Titans somehow get 10 wins. I think that's the chance the Colts have to lose that division. But minus 130 to me, it just seems like we talked about earlier. You're laying juice to win a division, but one, it's only minus 130. And, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the Colts with an 85% chance to win that division. So minus 130 feels like free money to me, which we all know it's not. All right, let's go to the AFC West. Let's go in order. JP, well, let's start here. None of us took the Chiefs. Would we all agree, odds aside, the Chiefs are the most likely winner of this division?
Yeah, I said it was going to be exactly like the NFC East last year, where none of us picked the favorite Cowboys, and the Cowboys won it. And it's the exact same thing is going to happen this year. Chiefs are going to run away with it.
So, JP, I'll start with you. You've picked a team that, great regular season success. They've been great in the playoffs. They never seem to make mental mistakes. They always seem to come through in the clutch. They definitely don't lose in, week 17 where they need to win to get into the playoffs. You like the Chargers plus 220 to win this division. Obviously, I know it's a different Chargers team. Still same head coach as last year. We've got over the Anthony Lynn from 2 years ago. We've got over, not knowing how many guys to run out on special teams and forgetting that you need to put a returner back when you're trying to get a punt and all that stuff. We've made some steps forward. You think they've made enough steps forward at plus 220 to win this division?
One of these years, I would really just like you to do like a Mount Rushmore of coaches that you have personal issues with. Right? Vic Fangio.
Vic Fangio, I have personal issues with. Anthony Lynn's just objectively a bad head coach.
Well, yes, there's plenty of those. So, no, I think Justin Herbert has been improving every year. He's going to keep improving. Austin Eckler is the best running back in this division, I think. Yeah. And they still have. Maybe you're going to say Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also on that train of free Javonte Williams, but he's not there yet.
Yeah. I think Austin Eckler is going to be the most productive back in this division. Justin Herbert has a very good chance to be the best quarterback in this division. And they still have Keenan, Mike Williams. They still have the weapons available for Herbert to do real damage. On the defense side of the ball, I know you love Derwin James. And
I mean, who can? Anybody who watches football should love Derwin James. How do you not love Derwin James? Although the Miami guy over there, he's not going to love Derwin James.
Yeah, I hate Derwin James. I was about to say that.
But no, I think for the Chargers to win this division, I personally don't. I still look at it as a 2-team division, the same way I do most other divisions. I don't like the Broncos as much as the general media does. I don't like Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to have immediate success there. And I don't think Derek Carr is going to win the AFC East or the AFC West, excuse me. So Chiefs Chargers, at some point the Chargers have to make a move past the Chiefs, and I think it could be this year. I think if they start winning the games like the Thursday night game where Kelsey was it overtime that he just had that incredible.
If you expect me to remember this, then you do not know how my brain works.
I think I remember exactly what you're talking about.
I remember where I was. I remember I was at this bar, the one on my hat. He just made this incredible spin and then just ran to the end zone. I think it was overtime.
I remember the play. I just don't remember when it was.
Pretty sure it was a Thursday night. Anyway, if they win games like that, they can win this division. And I think they're finally at that place where they can win it now.
All right, Kyle, you're on the Broncos. What are they? I think plus 260. Yeah, plus 260 to win this division. I know what your answer is going to be, so I'm going to give you the other side of this, and then I'll let you give your answer. Obviously, a lot of people like the Broncos because you've replaced Drew Lock with Russell Wilson. You've, replaced we've talked about a 1995 Honda Accord with a 2009 Honda Accord. You've got a newer Honda Accord, still not a brand new 2022, but you've got a new one that should be pretty good and get you to where you go. I guess all the times even passed. I can't do 2009 anymore because 2009's old. I guess I'm going to have to move them up to a 2000 Honda Accord in 2010 because it's still 12 years old. But that's what you're going to say. You're going to say you like the Broncos because obviously you've replaced Drew Lock with Russell Wilson. Let me give you the other side of why I think there's a chance the Broncos win this division, even though I'm going to pick somebody else. That defense so many young guys on it. They've got a couple veterans that I think can help that defense be better. But when you're looking at some of these young guys that they have, you could make a case for some of them at some point in their career could be the best defensive player in football or even just the best player at their position. When you're looking at some of these guys, you've got obviously Bradley Chubb, you've got Patrick Surtain, and Justin Simmons. I think those are kind of the three main young guys you're looking at. And then when you've got a couple guys, you've got Kareem Jackson who comes over from Houston. You've got Randy Gregory who, as Stephen A. Smith would say, as long as he stays off the weed, he'll be all right. I think there's a good combination on that defense. I think the defense could be, good where, a lot of people are picking the Broncos this year because they've got Russell Wilson and, hey, they could put up 25 points a game. And realistically, they could because I love Cortland Sutton as well. Kyle, is that your reason? We've got Russell Wilson over Drew Lock?
The funny thing is, I was going to touch on that for about 2 seconds and then start talking about the defense. So
Go ahead. Let me put this on a tee for you, and then you can hit a home run. There you go. Now hit a home run, Kyle. Be like your King Shohei and hit a home run.
Or home run, strikeout, same game, good stuff. But but yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. They have a young, talented defense. I mean, Pat Surtain. I remember back when Miami was recruiting him, and he chose Bama over Miami. I was absolutely devastated at the time, but I was like, because this is a game-changing player right here. I think he can make a big difference.
Now you both are too young to remember his dad, right? Neither of you remember his dad playing football?
No.
What was his name?
You brought up Miami. His dad was great cornerback in Miami. Keep going.
Yeah,
this is just me feeling old. This is just that point of the podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, they were, I believe they were a top 10 unit last year. And they're just going to continue improving this year. I think you have a chance to be a top 5 defense in the league. And then obviously adding Russell Wilson to the picture. I don't think you're just upgrading the Honda Accord there. I think you're upgrading from a Honda Accord to I'm trying
like
to
a CRV.
I'm trying to
like
think
a little bit bigger of a car.
I'm not going to say like BMW or Ferrari or something. I'm trying to think of that mid-tier. I think you're upgrading.
We'll do this. We've gone from a Toyota to like a low-tier Lexus. How about that?
Yes, that's perfect. I was about to say low-tier Audi. So we're thinking in the same wavelength here. But yeah, I think it is a huge upgrade at quarterback along with the upgrade on the defense. And you mentioned Javonte Williams, how we got to free him. So I think they could be a good team this year. I still think the Chiefs are the most likely team to win the division, as we mentioned, but there's a lot of value on that Broncos line.
And we haven't talked about it much at all throughout this podcast, but I think this is kind of the first time it might matter. People could argue that the Chiefs have the best in terms of this in this division, but I think the Broncos have the best special teams. I mean, Brandon McManus, obviously you can talk about with Butker over in Kansas City. I think Brandon McManus is the best kicker in that division, at least over the past couple of years. Butker kind of, had 1 or 2 really good years. He's still been, good, but he's now all of a sudden missing some extra points here and there. And I just think that, that's kind of the thing that at some point, I mean, you guys both finally got some kickers. Obviously I've got Justin Tucker. There's nothing better knowing, like, you're at the 27-yard line. You've got 2 timeouts. You're down 2. It's like, let's just run the ball twice and hopefully get a couple yards. And if not, let's kick a 45-yard field goal and win the game. I think that's, huge for them.
How about with Justin Tucker, you could be at the 45 and do that.
Well, that's
Ryan.
The Lions punt the ball to the Ravens and they get at their own 30. It's like, well, we're basically in field goal range.
You really have just set yourself up here to talk about special teams and then say, hey, who actually has the best kicker? It's Daniel Carlson.
I would argue Graham Gano was the best kicker in football outside of Justin Tucker last year.
I was saying in the division.
But no, I think we're all overlooking Harrison Butker and the fact that he just made a 70+ yard field goal last week in warm-ups.
Did he?
He did.
I think they're playing right now.
So here, JP, I'll ask you this question in a nice way. When you have a guy like Daniel Carlson who sucks for you and then he goes somewhere else and he's really good, does it at least help when your replacement for him is better, like he's good enough where it's like, all right, well, at least this kicker doesn't suck too. Like if you replace Daniel Carlson with Daniel Carlson, this would be much worse. But at least having a better kicker, it's got to help, right?
Well, yeah, I guess.
That sounded like that didn't help. That sounded like just you'd rather the Daniel Carlson that's on the Raiders to be the Daniel Carlson on the Vikings.
Right. I mean, he lost us a very severe, bad game with the Packers. He missed 3 kicks.
And still isn't the most infamous Vikings kicker.
Right. So we essentially replaced Walsh with him, and then had to find another replacement. So no, that does not make me feel better.
I mean, I guess I don't want to spend too much time on kickers, but we should, because before we get to the AFC North and talk about the Ravens, I mean, where are you at just in terms of the Vikings special teams and Greg Joseph in terms of him versus Carlson?
I don't care. If I don't think about the kicker, then it's a good thing.
See, I see it. If I would ask Kyle that, he would have been like, yeah, he's been like, kicker's so important. Having a great kicker, it's all that important. When your kicker's just very average, you're like, hopefully our team's good enough where the kicker doesn't really matter. That's where JP is at. Hopefully he's kicking extra points, and that's all we need him for.
If we have 5 games that come down to the end and we need a game-winning field goal, then something else has gone wrong.
That's what a Ravens fan, that's not always the worst.
When you don't have an offense like the Giants didn't last year, you need a kicker. You need a great kicker.
And I don't want to give him excuses because he obviously has been much better in Vegas. But outside of Denver, Kansas City can get cold and windy, but when you go to LA, like, it's a lot easier to kick in that division in the AFC West as opposed to when you're in Minnesota. Obviously, now there's no issues kicking in Minnesota. But you go to Green Bay in December, you're not getting much on that football. Chicago, we know what Chicago's like. And Detroit, it's like, Detroit's one of those wonky places where it's like Justin Tucker hits 65-yard field goals, but he'll miss like a 36-yard field goal. Like, Detroit's just one of those places where it's just like the ball might go through the uprights, it might not. So I'll give Daniel Carlson an excuse.
Daniel Carlson played 2 games in September for the Vikings, and he got cut.
I was just giving him an excuse. Maybe he was thinking about October, November, December.
He played in September.
This is like JP and I were trying to good cop, bad cop, like a witness, and I'm like, come on, like just I know you killed. Like, just where's the knife? And JP just walks up like, you fucking killed him. Where's the damn knife? All right, we talked enough about kickers, so let's go to the AFC North, where we'll talk more about a kicker.
Your pick yet for the
my pick? Oh, I didn't even go through my pick.
I
didn't go through my pick. I'm glad you said that. Speaking of Daniel Carlson, the Raiders plus 650. I know everyone's high on the Raiders. I'm not really as high on the Raiders as everyone else is. I'm not taking their team totals and stuff. I'm not on them in that, but I just think in terms of this division, we talked about the NFC East before. Chances are the Chiefs are going to win it. None of us have picked the favorite. I just think this is one of those divisions where I do think the Raiders are probably the 4th most likely team to win this division. I think you could argue the Broncos and the Raiders are kind of in that similar category. But this is one of those things where it's like, I think the Chargers should be plus 200, and the Broncos and the Raiders are both, in that plus 350, plus 400, something like that range. I think that's kind of, where I look at. When you look at this number, plus 650, I think it's too high. Obviously, we talked about Devontae leaving Green Bay, going back with his college teammate Derek Carr, who, Derek Carr is now turned into that guy when you're making the list of top 10 quarterbacks. Is he in? Is he out? Where is he? He's one of those guys that, has games and then, has where I'm sure JP will tell me exactly what night this was, but like what was it, a Monday night where he had to be carted off and then the next week he was fine? Was that what that was? Monday night?
Derek Carr? I don't know.
Yeah, remember he had that hip injury, he got hit out of bounds, he ran into the wall, they had to cart him off, and then the next week he was fine.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
No.
It's Derek Carr, so I don't really pay much attention.
Put some respect on the man's name. He's better than his brother, let's put it that way. All right, let's go to the AFC North. We're all in the Ravens. I just think at that number, I mean, obviously I'm a Ravens fan, so there's bias in it for me. When you're just looking at the Ravens in terms of a football team, they're a team year in and year out that consistently are good. Obviously, the Steelers are in that conversation too, of just teams that very rarely have those 4 or 5 win years where they're just really, really bad. Steelers haven't had one since Tomlin's been there, which I think is 13, 14 years by now, something like that. I just think, not that I'm not high on the Bengals, but I just think that we saw a lot of their best last year. And I think there's a chance that they could take some sort of a step backwards and still be a decent, 10, even 11 win team. And I don't know. I just feel like we saw, I'm that guy on Burrow. I think Burrow is that guy. And I've said it since the beginning. I hate that he's in Cincinnati because he's one of those guys I want to root for. And just, being in Cincinnati doesn't hurt, or doesn't help, I should say. They've got obviously Jamar Chase now. When you go back to the last stud, they had AJ Green average like 900 yards a game over the Ravens. Nobody else could catch a ball, but AJ Green would have 900 yards. Jamar Chase had like 400 last year in one game or whatever it was. So obviously, we've looked like we've gone back to having AJ Green 2.0 for them against us. Kyle, what has to happen for the Ravens to not win this division outside of Lamar Jackson getting hurt?
Well, that was actually going to be the first thing I said. I feel like I've been defaulting to injury, but that's actually one that's legit there. But yeah,
you should learn about the backup quarterback situation.
What's up?
You should learn about the backup quarterback situation. Tyler Huntley led us down the field last year to go beat Green Bay and didn't beat them, but
didn't beat them. But yeah, I think what will happen is, the Bengals just playing like they did down the stretch last year. Like you mentioned, we did see the absolute best of the Bengals last season down the stretch, and especially in the playoffs. Jamar Chase, what more could you say? Just popping off. But yeah, that would be what would have to happen. They would have to play that good all season, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
JP, what team outside of the Bengals would be most likely to win this division outside of the Bengals and the Ravens?
I don't think that should really be a question, unless Deshaun
So
Watson
neither.
has the suspension appealed. No, it would be the Steelers, and for them to win, they'd have to figure out between their three quarterbacks that one of them is elite, and they have good weapons too. Claypool, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. And they have the offense there. Obviously, TJ won on the defensive side. But for me, it comes down to the quarterback. I just don't think that between those three, if you have more than one quarterback, you really don't have any. And if one of them has a bad game, fans are going to be clamoring for the other guy. Trubisky and Pickett are going to be fighting out all season. If Mason Rudolph has a good game, then I just put a fork in Pittsburgh.
I think the big key for me with the Ravens, obviously, taking out a Lamar injury. We talked about Tyler Huntley, and I'm obviously not one of those crazy people that thinks Tyler Huntley is even close to what Lamar Jackson is. But I think he's good enough that, if you're a good team, he can win you a couple games if, Lamar needs a couple of games of rest and, win. I think he's good enough for that. But I like to look at this defense. This is a team that year in and year out, for the most part, defensively, historically, has just always been good. They always find a way to be good. Michael Lombardi, I think, is the one who had a good quote I saw last week, where he was like, the Ravens are just one of those teams where if you look at a position, they're just always going to have good guys at that position. He's like, when I was looking at their linebackers this year, it's like, let me see who they've still got over there. And it's like when you go through their starting linebackers, when you go through Tyus Bowser, Josh Bynes, Patrick Queen, and then you've got Owe, who, remembered how to sack people once he got to the NFL. He just, you look at this, it's like, just four guys that are good at football. That's just kind of how the Ravens are. They were always the team that were good up front, had a couple guys in that secondary, but always kind of gave up too much yards in the secondary when we couldn't get after the quarterback. But I think that's kind of been fixed over the past couple of years. Obviously, injuries have hurt, guys going down. But when we're looking at this back end of this, you could argue when healthy, this is the best secondary in football. When you've got Peters and Humphrey as your corners, you've got, what was the guy's name? Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, the rookie. Who knows if he starts? Because, Chuck Clark's been good for us at that strong safety position. But Kyle Hamilton, obviously, if you're using a first-round pick on a safety, you just think it's kind of that stud kind of guy. I just think the Ravens defense is good enough where they're going to not make Lamar have to win football games. He'll have to win games here and there, but I think they're just going to be good enough where we've talked about this before where, we make the joke about how Kirk Cousins isn't built to come back from behind. Lamar is not built to come back from behind. He can, and his throwing is, the amount of shit he gets on his arm and whatever is just because it's not as consistent as it was. And obviously it's not, it's harder to be consistent when, they're dropping 8-9 guys when you're up 20 points or whatever. So that's kind of the key, I think, to this team is the Ravens keeping them close in games early defensively. I think they're gonna have a couple games where they'll give up 3, 6, 9 points and just do it that way. But just kind of keeping teams under 20 points and just making Lamar Jackson allow Lamar. This is the great Harbaugh quote. We need to find a way to just allow Lamar Jackson to be Lamar Jackson. We always talk about, he's got to throw, he's got to run, he's got to do this. He won an MVP. Just make Lamar Jackson be Lamar Jackson. I think that's how we look at it with the Ravens in this division. I guess I'll start. Super Bowl picks. I know I'm going to be called a homer and a bias, and I don't think the Ravens are the most likely Super Bowl winner this year. I think there's probably 4, 5, 6 teams maybe that, are more likely to win a Super Bowl. But they're 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. Just to me, JP, I know you said that feels like the right price to you. 20-1. This is just a team where it's like there's certain teams, like we've talked about the Chargers earlier, where it's like they could be good and then they get to the playoffs. It's like, who knows what's going to happen? Like the Ravens are historically a good playoff team. They've got obviously Harbaugh, who's been there forever. This just feels like a thing that if you're going to bet them to win the division, 20-1 to win the Super Bowl seems like a no-brainer in that AFC, and then you can kind of hedge your way through the playoffs if you need to.
For me, the reason why I said it feels like the right price is just because they haven't had that kind of success in the playoffs with Lamar. He hasn't been as successful in the playoffs, and so given that track record that he has, I'm not inclined to look at them at 16-1, 15-1. That 20-1 feels more like the right number to me. And you brought it up with the Eagles. The Eagles is 22-1, and that's way too close to the Ravens. They should be 30-1 at best.
So, and the thing that I would say to that is obviously Lamar hasn't had the playoff success that other Ravens quarterbacks have had, especially obviously we talk about Flacco being one of the better playoff quarterbacks that this team and the league's, kind of ever seen when you get to the playoffs. But this whole Lamar, to me, it seems like it's all overblown about him in the playoffs because I just, nobody talks about it, how we beat the Titans last year in the playoffs. And yeah, it's beating the Titans, but it's beating the Titans the year after you were 14-point favorites at home and they came in and they took their dick and they shoved it right down your mouth. And Lamar Jackson last year goes into Tennessee in the playoffs, wins that football game. To me, that at least takes off this mindset that it's a mindset thing for Lamar. Like he gets to this stage and he thinks too much and he can't do it. I just think it's overblown where it's just, we lost to the Bills in the playoffs at Buffalo last year. Like 99% of the teams in the NFL last year were going to do that. The Chiefs go to Buffalo last year. I don't think they win the game. So I just think it's kind of somewhat overblown when it's like, oh, well, the Titans the year before, they were good. That's just kind of how I look at it. My long shots to win the Super Bowl now that we're here, I picked them both to win the division, so I think there's just some value. You've got 40-1. You're looking at the Raiders and the Vikings. I think there's both, a little bit of value there. Just putting a small bet there, and then if they get to the playoffs, talking about teams historically that aren't good in the playoffs, the Raiders and the Vikings, they're up there. But, hey, you don't have Blair Walsh anymore, so it could be worse.
I don't even think we're bad historically in the playoffs. It's just the Super Bowl.
Let's, Kyle, I have the Vikings as a 40-1. Obviously, you are going to go the other way. You're going to take a team from that division as not your long shot, but your Super Bowl winner if you had to pick one with odds. The Packers at 9-1. We kind of went over it. Is there anything else you kind of have to say about it, or it's Aaron Rodgers and the Packers?
No, we went over it. It's Aaron Rodgers, also Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the Packers. I'm betting on Rodgers.
And that defense.
Rodgers to figure it out with the weapons, the defense, and they could kill off games very easily with that run game. And then long shot wise, I was just looking at teams 40-1 and below, and I saw Bill Belichick at 50-1. And I said, that is ridiculous for still arguably top 3 coach in the league, maybe even the best still. Gotta go on the Patriots at 50-1.
Coaches, you could obviously, we talked about you could lose it. You could find a way to not connect with the players, and just as you get older, kind of. But Belichick's just one of those guys, he's just so smart football wise, where it's just like the second he starts talking, everybody listens in that room. So it's like you don't have to connect with him on a personal level. It's almost like a Nick Saban thing in Alabama, where it's like everyone just respects him so much that the second he starts talking, they know that he knows what he's talking about. So until he just goes cuckoo and loses his brain and whatever. Belichick's always going to be kind of that kind of coach. As opposed to a guy like a Tomlin, who is one of the best coaches in football. Not to say he doesn't have the X's and O's, but he's much more of a player's coach, getting their guys ready to go, getting them play in situations. So it's like at some point, if you lose that can kind of go a lot quicker, and that's how you lose a locker room and that. But I like it. Belichick 50-1. Can't hate on Belichick 50-1.
Did you see him running around with the UFC title belt?
I saw that they put a belt on or whatever. That's like people. I saw some people making fun of him. Let me tell you this: 3-year-old Ryan or 43-year-old Ryan would love to have someone put a UFC belt around him and me just like, I told you it's my time. Just pretending,
His smile when he was wearing that thing, people were like, he's never smiled this big ever. And I was like,
it was a genuine smile.
Yeah.
That was like that's the old that's the famous Portnoy story, is that when they were in Nantucket and they went to dinner with Belichick and his girlfriend or his wife with the holiday, whatever she is, that it was like we were talking about things and we're talking things outside of football. It's like I don't want to bring up football to him, like it's the offseason. He doesn't want to talk about it. But it's like the second I brought up football, like he just had this twinkle in his eye where it was just like all of a sudden it's just like he's back at home. Like some guys, it's just there's certain things. And I'd love to find out that Belichick's a huge UFC fan on the side and is like, you know what, guys? Sorry, come 6 o'clock on a Saturday. Like, there's no more film study. Like, we got guys on TV. That would be awesome to see. All right, JP, you've given me 2 losers, but I'll at least let you go through these losers. The 49ers, 16-1 to win the Super Bowl, and then your long shot, the Saints, 40-1. I'd argue the Saints have a better chance than the 49ers do.
No, I disagree. But growing up, I could never pick the right team. Given the 2 in the Super Bowl, I had a 15-year stretch where every year I'd root for the exact wrong team. So I will never pick a Super Bowl champion correctly. Having said that, last year, one of us had the Rams winning the Super Bowl. Another person actually had the Rams in the Super Bowl losing to the Chiefs. And the Rams were this kind of...
Wonder who that was.
That was Kyle.
Yeah, no, I
know. The Rams were this like preseason darling. All the hype was about them. Everyone wanted to know what would happen with their new quarterback. And so to me, I said, well, I'm not going to get this right anyway. And I'm just going to look for that exact team, the one that's hyped up in the preseason, new quarterback, what's going to happen this year. And that team was the 49ers, 16-1. I don't have much more analysis other than that. Obviously, strong running game. Deebo Samuel, strong defense. They have what it takes if Trey Lance takes that step forward and is half of what Matthew Stafford was last year. As far as the Saints, I talked about them in the divisional discussion, but they have weapons. If Mike Thomas ever plays, and you put him with Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave, like I said, Kamara's never going to get into trouble, and Jameis just needs to stay healthy and be what Jameis can be. And with that defense, they have that long shot, like I said originally, to sneak into a conference championship game, sneak into the Super Bowl, and maybe have a chance to win it.
All right, let's go. We'll go through some of our other bets and awards and stuff. I don't think there's much we need to go through. I think a lot of it is just, the reasoning behind it. We've all kind of gone through it, and I'll kind of go through it as we do. But let's start with MVP. Before we get into the guys, I think you guys are going to like this. I've got 3 trends for you in terms of MVP. And the last one is going to finish with a question, and I'm going to need you to name the player.
Thanks for doing this before.
Here's your NFL MVP trends. Well, I can't give them to you because then it's like the math teacher being like, guys, 3 + 2 is 5. It's like, well, we didn't know that, but thanks for telling us. This should be an easy answer, though. That's why I said 3 + 2. All right, here's your trends. 9 quarterbacks have won this award in a row. Since 2001, there have only been 3 non-quarterbacks to win it. All 3 were running backs. So when you're looking at a 20-year sample size, it's virtually all quarterbacks, and when it's not, it's a running back. Here's the one that I like. Every winner, whether a quarterback or a running back, their team won 11 games that year, except for one MVP. Could be a quarterback or he could be a running back. His team won 10 games in 2012. Who was it?
Adrian Peterson.
Correct.
That's what I was.
That's the stat that I like the most, not the Adrian Peterson part. But
I like
when
that
you're looking
part
at
the most.
every NMVP winner, their team has won 11 games. So do not pick an MVP if you don't think their team's capable of winning 11 games. Unless you have a guy like Adrian Peterson, who we talked about before, as a left guard running behind a left guard, and that's kind of how that helps. So
yeah, if you think the guy's going to rush for the second most yards in NFL history, then you can take him for the MVP.
You think Barry Sanders is coming back for a good year, then yeah, throw him on that MVP list. All right, so let's go through what we have. JP, you talked about it. You've got the Chargers to win the West. You think they're in a position where they could, put together 11 plus wins and have a good season. Justin Herbert 9-1 to win the MVP. I think there's not much, debate there. I think it's just kind of a, if the Vikings, if the Chargers are good and, Herbert's the quarterback of that team, he's taking a step forward every year. I just think this, I agree with you. I think there's a chance this is kind of that year. Kyle, I'm trying to see outside of the door behind you and the TV. Oh, you've got a dresser. There's a lot of squares behind you, which is what you've done with Patrick Mahomes at 9-1. But I can't hate on it because we've talked about it. He's still arguably the best quarterback in football, a team that, is most likely to win that division, whether they're going to or not. And maybe they don't win 11 games just because of, what's in that division. Mahomes at 9-1. That's kind of, I'd be pretty stupid if I was going to sit up here and be like, you know what, Kyle, that's a dumb bet. Especially because I'm going to follow it by saying Lamar Jackson at 20-1. Once again, same thing with the Ravens. I don't think he's the most likely MVP winner. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would be, somewhat surprised if he wins it. But it's a contract year. He's not talking contract during the year. He's one of those guys that represents himself, or at least for now, while that's allowed. To me, it just feels like if the Ravens are going to come out and win that division, if they're going to somehow win 11 and 12 games, if Lamar shows up as Lamar in a contract year, 20-1 just seems like a good price to me. And I just think if I'm looking at it, you could look at other guys in that Lamar range and be like, well, would I rather take two of these guys, or would I rather take Herbert or Mahomes, somebody who's 8-1, 9-1, 10-1, where, kind of half the odds. And I really think you can make the argument both ways, where it's like, hey, this guy's just in a better situation right now, talking about a guy like a Mahomes or a Herbert, where it's just like, hey, I think they're going to win 12 games. I think he's in a better situation. I just think 8, 9, 10-1, I think that's a better price. And for me, I just like taking the guys at, 20-1. I know I'm crazy here. I don't think it's crazy to put $2 on Jalen Hurts to win an MVP this year. I just think when you look at that division, those are three defenses where at their best they can be good, but at their worst they can give up a lot of yards, especially when we talk about with Dallas and how they're built with Diggs and, at the back, where Hurts is going to put up the numbers on the ground. We've seen what he does on the ground. He's decent with his arm, I would say. I think it's just, but in a situation where guys are 10 yards open because they're how the defenses are playing, if he somehow puts up a bunch of yards and they win, 11, 12 games and, win the division, I just think there's a chance, that he's able to do it. But like I said, I'm crazy, and I don't advise being crazy like that. But crazier things have happened.
One thing I just have to say about now that JP said it also as his MVP pick, he said it when we were breaking down divisions as well. I just think I love Justin Herbert, but to say he's better than Patrick Mahomes is blasphemous.
Oh, I don't think I said he's better.
You did. You said Herbert was the best quarterback in the division back when we were talking about the divisions.
I don't think individually he's a better player than Mahomes is, but I think he's in a better situation. And I think, especially, if we're talking MVP, people know Mahomes. People are used to voting for Mahomes for MVP. If Herbert has a breakout season with the same stats as Mahomes, I think Herbert has a better chance of getting MVP for that.
Yeah, I could see that. You just said he was better, so that just.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Please call me out for that.
All right. Let's go. Let's go. We're just gonna go through quickly a couple more of these. We'll go through the rookie of the year and the team total. Some things that we like. We'll put these at the end in a little graphic so you guys can see it. It's already, a little bit over an hour, and I don't want to keep you guys for 2 hours because. I'm already sick of listening to Dumb and Dumber over there, so I'm sure everyone else is as well. Obviously, anybody could listen to me talk forever because I'm brilliant and I'm the greatest ever. But, I'm trying to think there is no third character in Dumb and Dumber, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm just always like, you guys are dumb and dumber. We've already acknowledged JP, at least for tonight, is dumb and Kyle's dumber. A little bit of a microphone fiasco, which we'll get to later in the season, I'm sure, because I'm sure he'll lose it again or leave it in Miami or, who knows where that thing's going to be. But I'm just like, in Dumb and Dumber, I'm just like the random person that just kind of like has one scene, but it's just like, just instantly the smartest person in the scene because he's just next to Dumb and Dumber. Like, that's just, if you hang out with ugly guys, you're going to be hot. Hang out with stupid guys, you're going to be smart. That's what I've chosen to do. All right, rookies of the year. We didn't really get creative. JP, you've gone Breece Hall, I think he's 8-1, 9-1, plus 850, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
Hasn't officially been named the starting running back for the Jets, but I feel like, even if it's not week one, he'll be that guy. You don't draft a running back that high to put him on your bench. So I think that's a good value, and the Jets in a situation where, obviously with Zach Wilson, they're going to try and help him by having, being able to run the football.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Breece Hall, and I don't think there's a better rookie running back in the league right now. So I think I like Chris Olave too, but I think Landry and Thomas will steal shine from him. So Breece Hall was a better bet for me.
Kyle, me and you kept it simple. We went to the defensive side of the football. We're like, you know what? Let's just take the number one overall pick. Everyone says he's the best defensive player in the draft. Everyone says that he's going to be the best defensive rookie. When you're looking at a couple of other of these guys, you look at a guy like Trey Walker out of Georgia. Maybe his ceiling's higher at some point, but I just don't see how Hutchinson gets the throne this year as rookie of the year outside of him having a horrible season or just getting hurt. So I just think it's 6-1. I just think we're like, hey, let's just take the number one pick, right, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, I just think he's the most NFL-ready player on the defensive, on both sides of the ball, actually, in the draft, and I think he should hopefully, fingers crossed, cruise to this. Plus 450 is good value, I think.
Well, then go to FanDuel, you can get 6-1.
All right, I got to make an account there, I guess.
Got even better value. But I'd argue that between our rookie of the years, between Breece Hall and Aiden Hutchinson, I think they're the two most ready for NFL at this current stage of where they are as a rookie. I think that's kind of, when you're looking at rookie of the year bets, that's kind of what you want. Obviously, guys that are ready year one, because what they do year two, that doesn't help their rookie of the year cause. All right, let's go through team totals real quick. Like I said, we'll put these at the end. I'm just going to kind of read through these. We've kind of already gone through some of them. Kyle, Panthers over 6.5. Cowboys under 10. I'm with you on the Cowboys. I just think that there's a much more likely chance the Cowboys win 9 games than 11 games. If it's 10, I'll take the push. I just think asking the Cowboys to win 11 games is a lot this year. JP talked a lot about the Saints, obviously, as a long shot to win that division, over 8.5. This just seems like the pick that's too easy. Everybody's on it everywhere. It just feels too easy to me. I like it so much that it's not on my card because I just think it's too easy. But as we talked about before, sometimes that mouse can go in and get that cheese before it closes. Not very often, but sometimes you get it before that trapdoor closes. Jets over 5.5. That's another, I think, fairly popular pick. I think people were expecting Zach Wilson to take a step forward. Obviously, just, being a more well-rounded football team in Salah's year two, just second year as a head coach, obviously that helps things out. I just think, I agree with you. I think that number is a little low. I'd like it to be 5 because I think there's a chance they win 5 games. But yeah, 5.5, I don't think that's a crazy bet. And then Broncos under 10. I know Vic Fangio is not there anymore, but I'm always down for a Broncos under bet because of Vic Fangio. So I'm with you on that one. My team totals, I talked about it earlier. I think the Colts win the AFC South. I think the Texans and the Jags are better than people think. I still think the Titans are the second best team in that division and end up with the second most wins in that division. But under 9.5, I just think that's a good number for the Titans. I just, once again, winning 10 games seems like a lot to ask out of the Titans. You'll need Derrick Henry to once again just be the Derrick Henry of, smash running through brick walls. That defense in Tennessee, it's never been as good as it should be under Vrabel, and that secondary is just not good. And in a division like that, where it's like you got some guys that are going to try and throw the football between Matt Ryan, which we haven't even really talked about in Indianapolis. Obviously, he's a guy coming from Atlanta who likes to sling the ball. Trevor Lawrence is going to be in a position just like Davis Mills, where it's like, hey, we got to prove, obviously Davis Mills more than Trevor Lawrence, but just, hey, we got to prove that we're guys in this league and that, we're here to stay. Davis Mills may be playing for his job somewhat. Obviously, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is at that point until year 3 or something if he's still struggling. But Trevor Lawrence has that of, I'm the number 1 overall pick, and, you got to find a way to win games in this division. Kyle, you were on Cowboys under 10. I'm on the Cowboys under 10 as well. That's on my card. The Bears under 6. I don't see how the Bears win 7 games if they played 35 games. So under 6 seems like a great bet. I think you could take an under 5.5. I think you could take an under 4.5 and take a lot of plus money. I just think there's a chance that this team's historically bad. I don't think I'm not low on Fields. I'll put it this way. I just think with that offensive line, he's just set up for failure. The first-year head coach, it's just like to me, this could feel like a team that it really falls off the rails, and then in 2 years they're just a decent 10-win football team again. And I really think that could kind of be the thing with the Bears. So I like all of that. And then once again, my bias, the Ravens over 9.5. I do think it's tough, just especially because of the division in the AFC. But if I'm picking the Ravens to win the division, you got to pick them to win 10 games because hard to see the AFC North winner this year not winning 10 games.
I actually loved that Ravens 9.5. I just saw I think it was like minus 170 on the site.
Has it jumped?
And that scared me off a bit.
I bet it like a month or 2 months ago, and it was like minus 140. So I guess, if it's minus 170, maybe you take over 10 then and try and get it to plus money. But once again, I think there's a chance they win 10 and win the division. Obviously, winning 11, I wouldn't say should guarantee them the division, but it would be tough to see 2 teams winning 11 plus games in that division, in that AFC. All right, so what should we do? Let's just go through the fantasy sleepers that we brought up. So a little bit changed from the show this year, from last year. We're going to try and do a little bit more of a DFS or a fantasy, at least acknowledgement in it. Just kind of having that betting aspect, but also opening it up to guys who don't necessarily bet as much, but have a DFS or a fantasy interest, and at least hopefully providing some entertaining advice, whether it's good or not. I'll leave you guys up to decide that. But I'm gonna say all 3 of our sleepers, I'm on all 3. I like them all. Mine's obviously my favorite because it's me. JP's, yours is my second favorite, which we'll get to in a second. Kyle, Kadarius Toney. Just seems like one of those guys that maybe he plays 4 games and he does nothing, or maybe he plays 17 games and is, a top 20 receiver in football.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think we'd see a big step up from him last year. When he was playing last year, I mean, he looked great. Didn't get in the end zone much. None of our receivers did. But I think Daniel Jones turns a bit of a corner this year, and I think Kadarius Toney is going to be his favorite target.
JP was smart. JP, the Minnesota guy with the Ravens fan hosting, is like, I'm just going to take the guy who went to Minnesota and now plays on the Ravens. Rashad Bateman, you got to think, if he stays healthy, there's a reason they traded Hollywood Brown, and it's because they have Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, for me, it was as simple as looking at I looked at the Ravens, and Bateman's getting drafted 91st right now, but the Ravens have to throw to somebody. Lamar, even with all the drops for Hollywood last year, he played 16 games and he went for 1,000 yards. So Lamar is going to have to throw to somebody, and Bateman's going to be that option. So if he stays healthy, then there's no reason Bateman can't be a top 10, 15 receiver.
And it's a situation where it's like, obviously the Ravens aren't, there's not an influx of talent. But when you look at the offensive side of the ball, they get J.K. Dobbins back, who was one of the best running backs in college. Obviously, he was hurt last year. If Bateman stays healthy, you've got Mark Andrews, who I think outside of Kelsey and Kittle, and to me, when you look at tight ends, and I know this is kind of getting off track a little bit, but to me, there's like almost 2 tiers of tight ends, where I think it's 2 guys, and maybe I'm kind of leaving a couple guys out. But to me, it's Kelsey and Kittle as 1A and 1B, and I think just under them is Andrews and Darren Waller at 2A and 2B. I think those are the 2 top tiers of tight ends, where it's like, if I need a guy to find out and give me 100 yards in a game, and guys that I need going down the field, those are the 4 guys. We talked about Isaiah Likely with the Ravens as a rookie tight end. I just think there's this narrative of like, you can't draft fantasy guys on offenses that have so much, firepower, because it's like, where's he going to get his yards from? But we're in a day and age where you throw the football so much. There's the tempo is so much higher. Obviously, when you throw the football with incomplete passes, clock stops and there's more drives and more time. But, my guy, I'm looking at Hunter Renfrow, who he's got an average ADP right now of like 85 or something like that. People are afraid to draft him, not because of what he had last year, because obviously he was great for him last year. But it's like, oh, well, now they've got Devontae. Josh Jacobs is still there. You've got Darren Waller. It's like, how can we draft? Where's the yards there in Renfrow? I just think he's one of those guys where it's just, you see other players talking about him and you're just like, you have to have the respect because of how other players talk about him. And that kind of leads me into what I was going to say is that one final bet that I was going to say, I think there's, some money to throw on. The Raiders are like 25 or 30 to 1 to score the most points in the regular season. I don't think that's a crazy bet. I think there's a chance that, with that offense, especially in that division, get into some high tempo games. All it takes is 1 or 2 games where it's a 42-41 game, and have a couple of those years, especially in that division with the Chiefs and the Chargers. I don't think the Broncos are going to be playing those kind of games. But to me, that just seems like kind of one of those bets where it's like, hey, I don't expect it to win, but at this number, it just feels like, it shouldn't be this high. So that's kind of where we're at for, the preseason stuff. Like I said, we'll kind of change the pod up or the YouTube up a little bit as we go and, kind of fix things and, try and learn from last year. And then, as well with this year, just kind of taking your guys' advice and, just moving on and doing a week by week, kind of recording. I think we're hoping to record on Wednesday or Thursday nights and hopefully have that pod out to you, by Friday mornings. Obviously, recording Wednesdays are easier to get it out by Friday, but Thursdays are when injury reports come out. So, it makes it easier for us for Thursday. So we'll keep you updated on that, whether we're going to do any of that stuff or when we're going to do that stuff, I guess, and when to expect the pod out, whether on a Friday, Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday night. We'll kind of at least try and get it to a consistent spot where you can say, hey, Friday at noon or Friday, whatever the time is, that's when that's when the pod and the YouTube will drop. So I think that's kind of going to wrap it up for this preseason NFL 2022. We'll call it projections, bets, best bets, because everyone likes to call it best bets. We'll be back for week 1, before week 1, go over that stuff. Make sure you're following all of us on Twitter. Obviously, I'm much more in the content game than the two of them, but, hopefully we get these two of them in the content game as well. JP, Kyle, you've got K Mastoloni on Twitter, Viking Fan JP. We'll put the handles at the end. Obviously, you've got Mind Gambling, DFS Tips, and my website right now, betwithbaumohl.com. So we'll post the YouTube up when it's done, post it on the website, and then whether we do an audio-only podcast is going to be a TBD. And when I say TBD, it's whether I want to pay for the hosting service to pay for it or not. So TBD is I'll let you know if I decide if we just want to do YouTube or if we're going to do audio as well. But let me know if a lot of you guys, the YouTube doesn't work for you guys and you'd rather have audio, that's a better way for you. Let me know and, we'll get it out that way. So guys, thank you guys for joining me. I'm sure we'll look back at these picks in 3-4 months and say how stupid we were, but that's the beauty of the show, right?
It sure is. And Ryan, just wanted to say, Gauss with now 6 strikeouts. Toronto's tied with the Red Sox. Don't know if you need Gauss to get the win or not. On my end, Baylor dead mascot game against Albany and Houston dead mascot game. Take both of those. And Baylor to win the Big 12 conference this year. Let's go.
Kyle, good luck following that one up.
Oh yeah, it's a tough one. Number one, I'm gonna say thank God I didn't have to pick Coach of the Year again this year because he's gonna be fired, and so the picks can't be as bad as that. And number two, Canes to win the ACC this year. Go Canes.
When we were doing the preseason stuff for what we were gonna pick for this year, I almost felt like a parent who my child was just like. My 9-year-old peewee football child was just in the middle of a football game, just kept getting rocked, just tried to keep getting back up and just boom, just keep getting rocked. That's how I felt with you guys last year in some of the picks. And it's like, you know what? It's kind of my fault. I didn't teach my son how to play football and I just put him in the middle of a football field. It's like, no shit, he's going to get rocked. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to make Kyle pick a Coach of the Year this year because I like the fact that there's 32 NFL head coaches and I don't want any of them losing their jobs. If Kyle picked one of them to win Coach of the Year by week 6,
Kyle, pick John Harbaugh, see what happens.
Yeah, pick John Harbaugh And when there's a knock at your door and the lights go off, it wasn't me or somebody I paid to do it. All right, guys. Thanks. We'll see you before week 1. And like I said, make sure you tell all of our picks, especially mine, because I don't think I'm going to lose a bet all year. I think I'm going to win every single bet all year. So thanks, guys. See ya. Subscribe to the YouTube. Oh, we got to do that, the up, down, wherever, however that YouTube thing works. I'd say I'd put it right here, but the two of them don't edit, and I don't have the time to be able to edit, to be able to do all that kind of stuff. So if somebody wants to edit for me, we can start doing, hey, hit this button right here and subscribe. But instead, I'm just pointing my nose. So go to our YouTube page, hit that subscribe button. We're over 100 subscribers. Let's get that number to 200 by the season. Let's see if we can do that. So thank you guys for listening, everyone. Let's win some money. Let's do it. Have a good year, guys. Thanks.